predominantly for the HR purposes. It was for all the teaching and learning.
Just before she goes.
But don't get me wrong, we will be getting HR involved where they need to be involved.
Right. So I don't know if anyone else is going to join, but if I share my screen with you, and then I'm recording this, not because, you know, you're very welcome to have a recording for both of this, but it's just because it creates a bit of a transcript. And if there's any kind of ideas for development that you bring up, then what we're able to do is use those. So that's the reason for doing it. So hopefully you both can see the screen that we've got in front. Okay, so what I'm going to do is it's about developing this department and subject portfolios. So as we more or less move forward onto here, okay, and Jill, it's your first time you've joined us, but the session is about, one is improving your knowledge, but it's not about me, Steve, spending our time just talking continually and saying, by the way, that's the end, see you, bye-bye. What we also want and we value is getting your feedback. So both of you, because there's only two of you, you're both welcome to just unmute yourself and be involved, because it's not something we're going to share on the internet. It's not something we're going to do that. All it is really is to help. So if you've got any questions, because there's only two of you, then feel free to interrupt me with pleasure. Okay. So the idea is improving your knowledge, but also your ideas about what we need to do to take things forward. Okay. Now, the reason this subject and department portfolio came about is it seems to be something that's come around in the last 2 years. So it's something that I think has been more or less directed by Ofsted and inspections and those type of things. But it more or less started off with a question that both of you type when you have conversations with me come up with and say, can it do this? Can it do that? And that's how it more or less developed. And the idea is, I've just taken a little bit from Ofsted guidance, and it seems to be, you know, the whole point about subject leadership, department leadership, faculties and everything else like that is about those key people having an understanding of what's going on in their subject and what they need to drive it forward. And it was about creating a place for this to take place. So I've just more or less made some brief notes in here about curriculum planning, teaching standards, vision, about the progress of students, the quality of teaching. And it's important, and every organisation has members of staff that have now taken on this role that maybe 10 years ago, it was given to a senior leader in the school or a senior leader in the college. Now it seems to be that the whole expectation has gone upwards. So the point about it is, how can we use our system to help people? So what I'm going to do now is actually go into our system. And even though it's got things like SchoolIP on here, as Soraya's aware, it's just a platform and we can move it from here. Okay. So this is where I possibly need your input to help you, because I just need to more or less explain what we've done so far and what would be useful. Okay. So what we more or less have is members of staff are in the system and there they are, certain names. However, what we're able to do is create a portfolio that's for a subject. So English, maths, science, business, whatever you want. Now, the first question that people say to me is, well, why can't that be in just a person's portfolio? And the reason is, if Gary happened to leave, all of a sudden takes all of maths with them. So the idea, it has to be in two separate places. And in some kind of organizations as well, you might end up with department, faculty, subject leadership changing. So the point about it is having an area that you're able to put all your monitoring in. So I've logged in here as Marie Hughes, and what we've done is we've assigned the reports to as this area called maths. Now, for both of you, and feel free to interrupt me here, When we set up staff in the system and we set up, what we're doing is we give them a certain user right and we give them a certain like IP role. And that user right is what people are able to see in their portfolio and see down the left-hand side. So what we've got here with maths is you're able to say what we're going to do is we're going to create this user right called subject, and we're going to decide how we're going to use it. So for in the case of here, you can see that this differs from maybe a normal staff member because there aren't any like competencies, there aren't any standards in here. It might be that you decide you don't want to use these objectives. And what I'm going to do is just talk to you and show you the ways in which you can do it. And you might say, actually, I don't want this and I don't want that, because every organization is different. So the rights towards here mean that Marie, who's the subject lead, faculty lead for maths, is able to have full control of here. So Marie is able to log into here. So they don't need an extra login, for example, because they've got reports to. So they just click on it and it automatically comes into it. So then we start thinking about how we want to use it. So the first thing that happens is it seems that subject leaders, department heads, don't actually monitor members of staff. They don't go, what they do is they monitor a department, or they might monitor a year group. So in the case of Jill in the school situation, it might be, right, we're going to have somebody, and what we're going to do is we're going to like do analysis of a particular year group in geography. Or in Soraya, in your case, it might be what we're going to do is we're going to do a big like bit of monitoring exercise against business studies or something like that. So what actually happens is they come to the monitoring section here, and when they click add monitoring, they choose a particular form that's linked to a subject department. So you create a separate form. So a normal lesson observation form that you're doing against an individual for performance management or something like that might not be actually relevant. It might be you need it to be a bit broader or something like that. So what you're able to do is create one that's linked to only subjects. So if I happen to click into a member of staff now and click on this list and add monitoring, the subject ones wouldn't appear because they're not relevant. So the idea is you're able to more or less look and think, actually, I need this particular form and I only want it to apply to subjects. So what actually happens is Marie comes into this maths portfolio, clicks on it, and when she comes to do it, what actually happens is she chooses, not necessarily herself, but she could choose a subject here to be the observer. So you actually, the subject is being the observer. You can do it as Marie if you wanted to. It's not a big problem about who you actually have. So if I choose Marie, I can have the focus. Well, the reason for doing this subject learning walk might be, as an organization, we've identified questioning being something we need to focus on. So I put it into here. I'm doing this form more or less on myself, so it's not going to go into another member of staff, etc. Okay, can have a purpose. So exactly here, I could change this to subject if I wanted to, or anything else like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click run now and open it up. So I'm now, as the subject lead, going to go and do monitoring. I'm not doing it, look here, on any particular members of staff. It's not going to go into their individual portfolios. It's not, all that's going to happen is when I do that form, it's going to go straight into maths. What actually happens is I go along, fill it in accordingly how I wanted to. And as I go through now, at the top, it might be, obviously in the case of Soraya, business studies, it might be, we're going to focus on that. In the case of Jill, it might be, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on, for example, questioning, but what we're going to do is we've got different year groups. So it might be that up here, we're going to focus on particular year groups and we're going to do a learning walk on questioning in geography in a particular year group. We might do another one. So we might have a different form for each year group. And what actually happens is we come back, do the normal thing of save and close. We go back and reflect. And when we're happy, we submit it and it comes into our own area. It doesn't impact on any other members of staff. It doesn't go anywhere else like that at all. So everything here is a record of all the maths monitoring that's taken place. And the maths can also think about, well, what areas do I need to work on? Well, from my monitoring, I've come up here with some links to other subjects, effective support staff. So I'm going to stop now because Soraya's got a hand up anyway. All right. Any questions before I move on a little bit? Yes, Soraya.
Sorry, just on mic then. So, with what you've just shown me, now what happens is our reports, I export them.
Yes.
And then send them, disseminate them where they need to go.
Yeah.
So, what I'm just thinking, it's just so then I'm on the right path. So, for instance, construction CO1, if they had their own portfolio,
Yeah.
what I could do is export the report. Instead of exporting the report, basically copy and paste the data for the whole department on the learning walk forms into the one department form.
You could
because
do,
it
but
gives you
yeah.
it gives you at the bottom of the learning walk report on the percentages, it gives you your table.
Yeah.
So that table can inform a form, can't it? You know, the building of a form, really.
Could do. I think Steve's going to say something here.
You could still do it without putting everybody's in there, because all you would do is go to my reports monitoring and then filter by the department.
Yeah, that's right. So if I filter by department, I've got at the bottom, I've got the table that's exportable.
Yeah,
and that's what normally goes into all the SLT reports.
Yeah, so it would include this report, this portfolio as well. So any monitoring that you carry out against the maths, as long as the maths user is linked with the department, you can basically export it.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
then if you wanted to go to an nth degree, if you only wanted the ones that have been done on the whole department, you would add another filter. So you can do filter by department and then by staff member. So it will filter it to the specific portfolio for the maths.
Yeah.
And only give you the report on that, as opposed to everybody else.
Yeah. Because the wider picture of it is they know what they'll ascertain with their AP, assistant principal, what's a training need. So training needs need to have CPD and things like that. But they'll be able to put into their portfolio if it's raised. You can raise the actions on the forms. So if the actions are there, then they know what they've got to work to then to achieve that proficient. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because this ends up being, and I notice you've got your hand up, Jill, so I'll come to you in a minute. What actually happens is this becomes like, I suppose, because I'm a dinosaur and I'm quite old. In schools, it started off with like subject leaders having this huge, great lever arch file that they more or less put everything in and then they presented it. Then it seems to have moved on to a OneDrive, which is all kept. But the advantage of here is you can then analyze the results. So, for example, if you've got maths and I'm looking at the monitoring, I can start looking at some of these, for example, and all of a sudden it will create me a graph. So the subject leader knows which are the strong bits based upon the questions, the areas they need to work on. They can create their own more or less little action plan as well. All right, so that's the type of thing we can do. So sorry, Jill, I've kept you waiting there, so I do apologize.
No, not at all. 2 points. Love the monitoring forms and the use of them, application for subjects. And I don't know whether that's something I've just not played with yet. I struggle with the idea of maths effectively being in the same place as a person when you went into the my staff thing, because I think that would confuse the hell out of my staff. And the place where the other aspect, so to me this sits within kind of development plan aspect of it. The other thing I'd like to be able to do is to have that overview of all the departments. And if that was in the development plan section, with each department and the heads of department being able to sort of essentially do some of this functionality within that section, that's where I would more naturally go to look at it instead of as a staff item.
Yes. So totally, because we haven't really touched on the development plan bit. So what you've actually got is you've got Marie Hughes, who happens to, when they log in. So your subject leaders, and I totally understand about, you know, why have we got two places, you know, because that's something that I'm aware of, and it's not the only time that people have given some feedback on that. But I think it's just trying to make people aware they have their own professional portfolio, so their own career, their own performance management, but also they have their subject leader. And as I said right at the very beginning, the reason they've got a different folder is if they happen to leave, you don't want them taking everything to do with maths with you. So the point about it is, if thinking about it, if I went to your school and I looked at the subject leaders, they probably got all their subject leader stuff somewhere, whether it be in okay, point taken, in a cardboard wallet or something like that. So the point about it is they've got it in here. Now, you said actually the overview. Well, if you think about it, in your role, what you've actually got is the ability to click on all staff. And not only do you have all staff, you're going to have your English, you're going to have maths. So you're able to more or less click up here. And if I happen to click, whether we've got it into deep dive up here, anyway, it could be subject. So all of a sudden your subjects would appear here.
I think that's the bit that confuses me as to at the moment within the development app, and I'm just looking up, and bear in mind we've probably changed some language because we seem to do that quite a lot. I've got a development project which is called departmental specific, and then within that I've got my department's objectives for the year, and the progress, the success criteria, and all of that. So that's why I'm struggling to see if I could have the monitoring forms added to that. It's separated it without having maths appearing as a person, which seems odd to me. Yes,
because it's something, and this is why it's important we have this discussion, because it's something that's evolved based upon the needs, but we have to make it work. Because now if we come on to the development plan, the improvement bit, and Saray, I don't know if your college is using this bit of the function yet about the improvement plan. I can't remember.
Well, they keep developing the staff portfolios that much and that many times that, and SLT are happy with the way that they're doing their development plans and SARS currently. So that's, I'm not concerned or anything, or looking to start working in the development plan and SARS section as yet, because to be able to do that I need SLT involved, because it'll be developed to how they want it to be.
Okay, that's fine. So get this more or less section then just refers to what you've just said, Jill. So in theory, we've got particular objectives, which in most cases might be whole school objectives. And what you've probably done then is you've created activities, and you might involve your department heads in this process. And what you've done is probably assign them to particular departments. Down here, is that more or less what's happened?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then what you're saying is actually there's a section here that says monitoring. And why can't the monitoring bit that happens appear in here?
Yes and no. If you backtrack to where, if you just clicked on the development plan bit.
Okay, so if we go back,
and back once more, because mine looks different.
So that's your overall plan.
Yes. So in here, right at the bottom of that page on mine, we've got our overall school priorities.
Yeah.
So I've entered those there, and then back up to the results bit, I've then set the department specific project in there.
Where it's got here, like maths, English, science, those type of things.
No, because I decided that I would end up with so many, and it didn't then link to. So I've put in as our school priorities, our 3 normal priorities: teaching and learning and departmental development.
Okay.
So I've then assigned within departmental development, department specific project, and then I can look at what are all of my departments doing that link specifically to things departmental rather than whole school big priorities.
So that's more or less what you've done here then, is you've linked this created this objective that might be related to maths, etc. The lead happens to be Charlie Blackman, who happens to be maths, and then this becomes their little bit of project towards it. Is that more or less it then?
So where you've got whole school there, I've got biology, geography, history, and then what their development is. So I can then pull out at various levels and say, I want to know what biology are doing, and I want to know what they're doing at whole school collaboration level, but also within their department. And
so what you're able to do then is come up to here, click onto filters, and you can filter by department here, for example. So we could choose maths, and that in theory, Soraya, becomes your maths action plan. Okay.
But the bit that I can't do at the moment is then it would be nice to be able to, what you've just showed us with the monitoring and the deep dives and the walks, be able to have that all within here rather than sitting pretending to be a person in my staff.
Yes, which is up to this bit here where it's got things like evidence. And when you add evidence, in theory, what you're talking about are some of these monitoring forms.
But that then only links to that specific objective that the department has set.
Yes.
It doesn't, if I'm being a really good head of maths and just want to wander around just for the sake of doing a deep dive in my department on something that doesn't specifically relate to an objective, where I can't record that within the development plan section. That's
so in that case then, how, using both your brains on this one then, how are you able then to just think about how we can do this? Because this is what part of our meeting is, because I totally understand what you're coming about, the idea of having a different portfolio. It's an area to store department evidence. It's an area to store everything that's going on, that you're able to do it. And the whole point then is we'd like it in this bit. So the idea is how can we get it to work? Because as I'm recording this will be then used for me to then circulate to development to try and help this going forward.
So I'm sure it's a really easy thing to do, Andy, and I have no idea. To me, the most obvious way is when I click on the left, scroll up a minute. When I click on that development plan bit on the left-hand side, if it had departments on there as one of my options.
Okay, so I click on here, and then
a bit like when you click on CPD, it's got that. So if for development plan it was split into sections, one of which said department, and then the bit that you've just shown us where maths was pretending to be a person was in there. So the head of maths can go in as a department and do a lot of the stuff that you were just showing us, but it just sort of sits within that development, because that is really why we're doing all of the learning walks and the deep dives. It is part of developing.
Okay.
And then we could have another drop down bit that was sort of whole school improvement or school development, stuff that links in. Does that sort of make sense?
Because what you also have to do is make sure we get the rights correct. I wasn't going to say get the rights right, but get the rights correct, because what we also need to make sure is if you've got it here, that whoever Marie is linked to, so if Marie's maths, they have the right that when they click on here, it only goes to maths. What we don't want is then Marie having the ability sometimes, because there could be things in there that you don't want to share, click on English and see what's happening in English department, isn't it? So it's just about making sure that as a leader, fair enough, you can click in here, but as a particular member of staff who oversees that particular department or subject or faculty, when they click in here, they only see theirs. And what you're saying is have something here that then clicks and actually goes automatically into this bit. So when I load up my staff here and we do that, so automatically goes into something like this. That more or less what you're, but in that bit.
Yes, but I think I think. But I think just making that user experience different when you're going into a department than when you are going into your personal development feed.
Okay.
Because the interface you're showing at the moment looks very much like the person one, because it sort of is. And I'd quite like the head of maths to know that they are in the department one, and I'm looking for slightly different objectives and things like that. The other nice thing, Andy, just to make it super easy as well, is if the head of maths went in there, entered their objectives and could link them to school priorities, if that could automatically populate into my whole school development plan. So when I go in to print off my report for governors, that I don't have to re-enter it all. That would be nice.
So that bit here, having them, because that's been also mentioned with certain organisations, because if we mention that as a particular person, what they're saying is sometimes they have objectives that actually a school development plan objective as their performance management. So what they're saying is when you click on here and add objective, having the ability that if it clicks on SDP objective or create one here, it will automatically create the objective that will form your SDP. So what you're looking for is a link between certain bits of functionality. So it populates the school development plan and at the same time links it with other things. That's what you're looking for, isn't it? Rather than having to duplicate things.
Andy?
Yes, sorry, Steve.
Can you go to the set?
Yeah, so
I haven't got that far, Steve.
No, but it might be just the functionality, actually.
There's a reason I'm going there. If you go into one of the questions for me.
So if I went into, that one. Okay.
There's this functionality already in this section. That's why I'm asking you. Basically.
So if we went into here.
So you want something similar to here, where you can either create a new one or you can attach it to an existing one.
Is that directed at me, Steve, or is it Andy?
Andy.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a bit when it finally decides to load up for me, that is.
I think you've broken it, Andy.
No, I haven't broken it, because here's your Ceph, and what you're talking about is this link here, Steve.
Yeah. Basically, you can create from here, and it automatically adds into your development plan. So you want something similar to this, basically. So I could either add it into an existing one, or I can add new ones.
Yes, but I think certainly for me, I don't want my heads of department to necessarily come in and interact at this level with the Ceph.
No. I'm talking about having something like a department portfolio.
Yeah.
And having it set more like this, so you come in and you can interlink it to your development plan by either adding one in and then linking it to an existing one, or basically creating a whole new one, basically.
Yeah, and if the department one, instead of saying Ofsted at the top, it said maths or whatever.
Yeah, it would do. It's just because we're in Ceph.
Yeah. No, I understand that.
So it's sort of a hybrid of this page and the portfolio page.
Yeah,
we're looking for. So you can see the monitoring in there, be able to see the objectives that has been set, as well as the ability to create new ones and link it, and basically link it back and create ones straight off, basically. So,
Yes.
so along them lines you're looking for.
And then the heads of department can effectively populate the development plan section by entering it, and then the monitoring aspects.
Yeah.
It would be really useful as a senior manager as well to be able to go into this new mythical department section and say, I'd like to see all of the deep dives, or for any departments. That I'll stop
Because
now.
if there was a tab here that was like monitoring that looked very similar to that subject department portfolio and had the same functionality there, then you should be able to come into my reports and then generate a report on all the monitoring that's been going on against subjects, and from that collate that as well. So we have the functionality. What we don't have is the seamlessly linking all the bits. So we've got like this bit, yeah, we like this bit, but that doesn't quite work with our subject portfolio, but it's not set up so far. But then on the other hand, we like a monitoring section because we like the monitoring section, as Soraya said, because we can generate reports on that. So it is about just hybrid, bringing the bits together that allow us to get the outcome without making it, you know, as you've said right at the very beginning, Jill, well, I like that bit, the monitoring bit I really like, but I think my staff at the present time aren't in a position to understand the difference between, because it looks similar, the difference between this individual portfolio, because we're just getting our head around developing staff, and then a subject portfolio, because they look exactly the same. So it is that type of thing, really.
I think it's also the logic of, I'm going in to do something departmental based, so I'm not going into my staff section. I'm going into my development departmental section, and that's where I'm going to keep that chunk so that they stay separate and a bit more logical.
On the home screen though, or the menu, should there be something like my department?
So you mean on here? So if we come into here, see now, I told you during this meeting we'd be going off in all kinds of tangents. So here, what you've got is me, my staff, my school. What we're talking about is, should we have a little tab here that says my department?
You would also need to in the main menu, Andrew, underneath where you go to my staff. It maybe if you've got both, it should give you the option to select.
Okay.
Andy, this homepage confused my staff no end. So I
there's two.
Played with it and reset it so that now everybody in the organization's homepage takes them to their portfolio.
Okay.
And then if, as a manager, I want to go and see, if I'm a HOD and I want to see my staff, I click on my staff. Because I was having so many different levels of people with different home screens that when I tried to give them help, I couldn't write generic help things and use them for them. So I changed the home page to be my home. So yeah, it would be nice to have a go to my department bit.
But on the side menu.
Yeah, and I mean, it could be that you've got your little home button, then my staff, underneath it is my department.
Yeah.
And then, but I still obviously want my cake and eat it. I still want that to tie directly into the development app, so I don't have to re-input it.
Yeah,
you're going to not invite me again.
No. I think this is how we. That's why it's not about this is the way to do it. This is the way that we've had to evolve based upon the needs that people have come to us, and we've based upon the functionality that we've presently got within the system. This is the way we've had to do it. And ideally, a whole load of other people, said they were going to come tonight. This is the important thing about it, because you use it on a day in, day out. We use it continually, but in theory, my days of being a head teacher, being in charge, overseeing safeguarding, overseeing this, don't exist anymore. This is what I spend my day doing. Where in your case, you're juggling so many other things in the school day. It's making sure that it actually works for you and you get to the outcome. So fortunately, we've got school, we've got a college, different positions, different ways of doing things, but it's making sure that we create a system that we can never please everybody, but what we can try and do is tick as many boxes as possible to make the experience really easy. So whatever feedback you give is really important to us.
But I think that might help. It might also then fit Serena's needs as well, because if you went and had a department little button where your mouse is now,
yeah,
then all of that monitoring and the forms that you were using would then sit within that. One of the struggles I think the staff have is because they don't log into it very often, when they go in, those buttons down the side, if it does exactly what they say, so if there is one that says department and they input departmental stuff in there, I think that makes it easier. I think when you get to whole school development plan SEF stuff, you can work out where the separate buttons are, but up to HOD level, I need it to be as easy as possible.
So that's fine. I don't know, Soraya or Steve, you got anything else to add to this little bit?
You see, at this stage, I'm just looking at the starting from the bottom, and the forms are in the staff portfolios. They then populate into a monitoring report, and it's how that the overarching data links into a department portfolio wherever you're going to develop and seat it, which I don't know, but I think it may be through the build of the monitoring forms, but things like that. So you make sure, because Ofsted will, you've got to make sure you've got all your evidence and your actions fall into your department portfolio and for the HOD to monitor and make sure that all the evidence is there to be able to then mark that action as being met, achieved, and things like that. So it's the linking of everything. So then, because I'm that person on the ground that at this moment in time is exporting everything, not rejigging it as such, but SLT are really liking the reports that we're getting and able to extract, and they're using them as well, and it's informing things. So if we can keep that pathway going upwards, but not take away the actual ease and use of. So that's why I think it's going to be, linking, creating links.
What I say, we have to make it work, and we have to make it fit for purpose for both of yours and close on 1,000 organisations that are using this.
Yeah,
because the education changes, so we have to adapt and change as well. And what we pride ourselves is not shoehorning you and saying this is the school IP way, this is it, because I'm quite fortunate. I get the chance of speaking to many schools, many organisations, colleges worldwide, and everybody, even though you assume they all look the same from the outside, have different ways of doing things. And that's what we pride ourselves to, trying to be adaptable, but at the same time getting feedback to move in that direction. So we've got some valuable feedback from what you've just said. How we do it, obviously you've been part of this user group, so we can use you as a sounding board and just say, what about this, what about that, what about moving on from here and doing that. And it could be, in the meantime, in the case of you, Jill, it's we have to have these, as in this maths, right? We have to, because it's somewhere for the monitoring to go. But what it could be is your department heads, etc., aren't given the line manager bit, so it doesn't actually appear. But what actually happens is when you come to do monitoring, so you can do it from the home screen, you can do it from here as a leader, what actually happens is you add monitoring, and when you come to it, you're doing it against maths. So it could be, to start off, so it doesn't confuse your heads of department, that what you're saying, if we're going to do some maths monitoring, if we're going to do some geography monitoring, it needs somewhere for it to go. But so we don't complicate it and they have this area and they go, what's happening in this area? They just produce the information and it goes into there, and then you're able to analyze it. The problem is that they're able to access it anyway. So anything that they have more or less done as maths, they'll be able to see. It's just making sure that by them doing the forms against maths, by them doing the forms against geography, they're also able to look at the data. So they should be able to then come into my reports because they've actually done that monitoring and see it anyway. So it could be that they can bypass the idea of having this area allocated to them, but they'll still be able to see the monitoring that's gone against maths. Would that help in the short term, Jill?
Possibly.
The thing you've got to remember with the My Staff page, Andy, is it will only show you the staff that report to you. So if you've only got one department user, it will only show that one group. It won't show. The problem for you, Jill, is you get everybody. And you will see every single one. But as a staff member, a lead, you will only get one of them because it's reporting to you and not to somebody else.
Yeah, I think it's just to me a logic place of I would never look for a department in a My Staff tab.
We have stated this and raised a number of items for our development team to look at.
And whether that has to sort of sit there system wise, I don't know whether it's possible to duplicate it in a department place, or it can sit there and I don't see it.
What if there's an option in the account to say this is a department account, and we have a My Staff tab and a My Department tab? In short term, I'm just thinking, is there an easy way to separate these out for you? And then we can look at the bigger picture of getting it all interlinked back into the development plan.
Yeah, I think if we can separate it out, and I think to me, where Andy's on my reports at the moment, if that moved down a block and it said department, then that would, I could come in.
It's the fact that you're getting the departments mixed in with the staff themselves.
Yeah.
If we could find a way of separating them out, it would be easier.
Yeah.
So we'll need to raise that, Andy, and send it over to the development team.
Well, development will be watching this video with excitement, won't they?
Yeah.
I'm gonna hide.
That's what it's there for, really. So okay. So
problem is, Jill, they can find your address at the school.
Yeah. True.
Work from home for a few days.
We've done that. So have we got anything else that we need to cover regarding the department and the subject, more or less, portfolio, or where it's going to go? Or we just about exhausted that one now, and before we move on to something slightly different? What are your thoughts? Is there anything else that we need to cover on that? Because I imagine we're going to come back to it again, so it's not a big problem, is it? We're not going to dust it and say we'll put it out of the way somewhere.
Yeah, how do you move managers away from the 1,000 locations in which they're storing information at the moment? Because as a staff, their own portfolios absolutely brilliant. But managers and department data and information, we've managed to get it centralized into SharePoint.
Yeah.
But then you find yourself having to add like work experience because of the employability side of information and things like that, you see. So I know with the department portfolios, I'm going to have a, no, we're not ready for it yet, you know, and hogging all these little streams and pathways that they've already got. But I'll get there. I will get there with them.
Out, sorry.
Right, okay then. So, as we now move on, obviously, hopefully from the conversations we've had, and Soraya has joined us on various of these little user groups. What we're trying to do, and both of you have come across this, we're trying to simplify the process. We're trying to make it so that it doesn't confuse. And what one word that you used, Jill, was the idea of logic, the idea of putting that in. We're trying to improve the user experience, and you'll find that in the help guidance now. So when you go into your IP and click on help, you'll find now that we're trying to make it a lot more informative, a lot more friendly. There's a search button, because the whole point about it, what I don't want and what we don't want, is a situation where all of a sudden everyone keeps on asking you for questions, when there's actually help in there that they can go and click on and do things. Obviously, you're always going to have the person, you know, back to the days, even if it wasn't anything to do with IP, where it's, oh, I forgot my password, how do I log on? You're always going to have those people. You can't escape those people, all right? But if we can try and make people more independent, we're going to do that. So the idea is, and as I said previously, by becoming independent, we've got to have a culture, because I still have conversations with people who go, oh, what happens if I click this? Will I break it? Well, we've got to encourage people to have a go, because, and then we've got to build in ways that if you do happen to make a mistake, you can get out of it. So what you'll notice is some of the bulk actions as we move forward. You'll see there's things where you can change dates, you can bulk change competencies, standards, you can do things in bulk, where if you happen to make a mistake, you don't have to go and panic and have less hair than me. So we're gradually starting to go in that particular direction. Okay. Now, possible enhancements, we're creating more to do with the CPD. So there is potential for developing the idea of a CPD menu, because many organizations now are creating CPD, and they're planning their CPD through the year and creating this like book of all these different CPD activities, and then members of staff have got to choose what they're going to do. So there's something about that going forward. So the schools are making, organizations, colleges are making people a lot more independent and saying, well, actually, these are all the CPD opportunities. You tell us which ones you're going to do, going to click on it, and off you go. So we're going through that way of making people independent, because that's the direction that a lot of education is going to go for. Okay. So those are possible enhancements we're going to do. Is there anything that you both come across that you think would be pretty good enhancement moving forward?
For the CPD bit, excuse me a minute. I'll deafen you all by coughing. So for some of our safeguarding, we use Educare modules.
Yeah.
And then people submit their certificates, or we monitor it on that system. That's a bad example, but they do it external to SchoolIP. It would be useful to be able for them to be able to upload it, and for us to say, yes, you have done that, and have a record that they've done that on this system.
So did you want to say this about the evidence, Steve?
Yeah, basically what they do is, because all your CPD appears in your portfolio, if you add the certificate as evidence, you can link it to the CPD course.
Okay.
Jill's looking confused.
I am, just in a way that we then need to go back in and check that everybody has done that course, if I let staff input the name of the course themselves, they will input it all slightly differently and I won't be able to filter it.
This is where we come back to the CPD menu. The CPD menu is going to be like a list of courses that you can pre-select.
Yeah.
And maybe when that functionality comes in, you can use that so they can go in and select it and then put the certificate against it. I think some of the other things they're looking at is looking to have renewal dates on the courses, so it comes up and sends the user an email and the CPD coordinator an email to say this course is due for renewal.
That would be really good, as long as there's a place within that process for, not that I don't trust my staff, but for them to then just drag and drop the certificate and click complete, so that we can go in and say, so, because sometimes if they just tick a button and haven't done it, I need to know that they've done it. So if that was part of that, that would be great.
Yeah, because what you would do at the moment is probably, once you've added the certificate, is if you give them the option to manage their CPD, they can actually set it to attended. So that's one way of doing it.
Yeah, sorry, that's how we're doing it at the moment. We that responsibility, when we rolled the training out on the CPD module, we made all staff aware that it's their responsibility. So the CPD coordinator can export any, the report for course or courses, and then they're able to filter down to where the status hasn't been updated, and that then goes over to managers for them to chase. Because what we found was that staff were only updating their attendance and providing feedback on a semester basis. So near enough at the end of semester 1, and find it, because all staff are due their progress reviews, they're all going in updating it. So if Nicola, our DP, asked me to pull a report off for feedback on a particular course, it wouldn't be complete, you see. So we've made that a responsibility of the actual staff members.
So if we created in the
them
CPD,
via the managers,
if we created in the CPD something that said certificate required, and they had to, we couldn't say it was a certificate. What we could say was evidence. So what actually happens is they would have to attach some evidence before they were allowed to say they've completed or attended it. Yeah, we couldn't guarantee that they would upload the right certificate. We can't guarantee they don't just upload a blank piece of paper. But in theory, if it was some kind of default at a particular course and said evidence required, certificate required, in theory, they couldn't click complete until they'd actually uploaded that certificate, uploaded that piece of evidence in there. And then what actually happens is, as soon as they've uploaded, then you can click complete. And if someone is going to make the effort of uploading a blank piece of paper, then that may be slightly of a discipline issue rather than something else. But at least then you've made it a bit like cheating with your homework, isn't it, really? But the whole point about it, at least you've put it in and said, well, actually, you've clicked completed, you've uploaded the certificate, but actually you haven't uploaded it at all. You've uploaded a blank piece of paper. But that possibly could be some kind of default that possibly would help. Is that more or less a bit, Jill?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think that's a difficult
what you could
thing
possibly
to do,
Andy.
Pardon?
What you could actually do is also have it verified. So the CPD coordinator or the line manager would have to verify it before it completed it fully.
Yeah, you could.
Oh, I'm not having no more tasks into that CPD coordinator role.
I see. I love
we'll
that.
do line manager now, so So now we do the CPD workflow. We can have it so you can select which one you wanted, whether it be the CPD coordinator or the line manager that verifies it.
But something straightforward.
At your place, I'd go for the CPD coordinator.
Well, I'll pass that task to HR. if I don't mind saying so.
But I was just thinking whether it could be just verified by the line manager personally. So the point about it is it's up there, it clicks and so. But I think the easiest way is to have it saying documentation required, evidence required before it can be completed.
Yeah.
And then just upload, because it might not necessarily be a certificate. It might be had to do this particular course and had to submit this piece of evidence, which might not be a certificate. So
yeah, we've got to think about the workload of the managers as well, you see. Yeah. You know, so.
Well, I think just you can do it then, sorry.
Oh, stop it.
I quite like Steve's suggestion, not that it goes to your inbox, Serena, because then there's different, for our statutory training that we have to at the beginning of the year, we do need some verification. If it could go to, and I can choose the person it goes to or the level so whether it is a line manager, so everybody's got 8 to do or whatever it is, or whether it's the HR, or if I can choose who or which level it goes to for verification, and it's an option of having it on or off, so Serena can turn it off.
Yes, yes.
Or having the verification against the course. So basically, not all courses will need verification.
Yeah. So if I can go to my statutory one and say this one requires evidence and requires verification by Fred, but I can also turn those off.
Yeah.
And an email sent to the person that needs to verify it.
I think, Andy, I need to discover this CPD menu bit because I haven't even discovered it yet.
So here's you putting all these things in, Joe, and it's like, yeah, we haven't touched that yet. That's like Soraya, we haven't got a guards department, but I think it'd be a good idea if we do this bit.
I'm trying to, because predominantly CPD is managed via the HR department. Yeah. So the CPD coordinator role, I'm trying to make it flow into the HR department. So at this moment in time, they monitor probation, the online assignments via training tools. It's the staff member's responsibility to upload the certificates to their portfolios. So then the line manager can knock that objective off as completed. Okay. But with the inset days, this is where, you know, the bulk stuff comes in. Creating one course and being able to assign all the staff, you know, for your statutory training. That's really good. We just need to be smarter because courses are going on at this moment in time after they've taken place. So I just need to speak to my manager on how to approach that with the HR department.
Okay. Perfect. Any more enhancements that you've thought of? Anything else that you've come across?
Don't ask Saria. We'll be here all night.
I feel I ought to at least use it first.
Fair enough. Okay, well, on to that.
I don't even know where the button is.
and the add CPD button at this stage, our college wouldn't look to remove that because CollegeiP carries a lot of accountability. And the staff member is responsible. We've made them responsible for the evidence section and the CPD section. And we know that they're doing a lot of webinars, you know, one-off CPD. So they've been directed to, they've got to add it to their portfolio.
So if it's an online webinar, they can actually attach the video.
They could do. Don't talk to me about digital skills and CollegeiP because I'm on it.
Right. Okay, then. The next bit is, what would you like us to cover in future user groups? Because we've got the next one, and our idea is possibly... Possibly the idea of these interim reviews and using the blog function might be something, because that's normally when things, you know, the professional conversations, but we're quite happy to go with the flow.
Yeah, the blog section, interim reviews, I think we're fine with those. the blogs, what I want to do is have a look at that element and that feature with regards to the sharing of best practice.
Okay. What about you, Jill? Any thoughts what you'd like to cover?
Andy.
Just how to use the system, Andy.
All right, Steve.
How rude, Steve.
I know. It's disgraceful.
I'm an honest person.
I've made a lot of progress, haven't I, Andy?
You have. You're whizzing along now.
On the professional conversations, with the interim reviews, we're starting to try and persuade people to do them. When we have that first review at the beginning of the year, so you come in, shiny new September, you set your objectives. There's no, to me, logical place to record a conversation at that point, because it's not an interim review. People got really cross with me this year because it's an initial, like, or whatever other word you want to use. They don't particularly like using the blog. And
is the reason for that? Because the only people that can see it is an administrator, the line manager, and the staff member. Nobody else can see it.
But I think for me, the purpose of an interim review is that I can look at it and say, I know that's been done. On the blog, I've got no way of making sure that 1st September chat happens and that I can look down and say, when a staff member comes up and say, my line manager never talks to me, it's about that sort of accountability aspect. And if I'm then asking them through the year to follow up with interim reviews,
share with the user. Basically, what they could do is when they add the blog, there's a functionality that says sharing. They click it and they can select share with the user, and they can actually attach you to it.
But I think in terms of making it a logical process, if I'm saying your performance management for the year is you meet in September, you have your initial meeting, your initial review, whatever it is, and then you meet every term, you have an interim review, and then in July you have a final review. We're sticking to the same process and building on. Then when I look at the interim review, I get my initial conversation in the same place.
Yeah, I think on our side as well, we call it IMR1 at the start of the year is purely the setting of targets. So it's the managers have got to set the targets in the objectives, and the objectives are all separate. So what I found this year is that in an evening at weekend, managers were setting the performance criteria in each of the objectives, but there's no meeting taking place with that staff member. And that's what I need to take to my manager and Leon, our DP, and ask the question, do they want it recording as a meeting, or are they happy for this to happen? And the accountability then comes back down to that staff member to log into CollegeiP and make themselves aware of what their percentage targets are. We've picked that up on our side as well.
When you add an objective for a staff member, it sends an email to them.
It does, but with teachers, because they all have the same standard set of objectives, I bulk upload them. And then what happens then, because I can't set the percentage targets,
it will
and I wouldn't even try
as well.
It's the managers that then go in and update the performance criteria once I've done the bulk upload. But again, it comes down to workload, and when they do it, they're given a time frame. But what can happen from there is I generate a report, and it'll show me all the blanks where the performance criteria have not been set.
Okay, so
and that then goes to the APs to address.
So answering the question is, it looks like number 3, we are going to focus in our next one, and both of you hopefully will be able to attend. And what we'll end up doing is thinking about an ideal bit of the process. And it could be that we have to change a few settings behind the scenes that are already in the system. But if both of you come up with the way in which you like it to work, that you use in schools, using colleges, then we can see if there's a setting or whether we have to change something, because you want to record it. You don't want staff to feel that they're bypassed. You want to make sure that you're creating a portfolio, and this is where you then change it slightly to make for potentially a line manager's objectives to actually develop the members of staff they are actually line managing. So that means engaging in conversation. So part of their evaluation, part of their assessment is actually what they're doing with that member of staff, whether it be, they're engaging in conversation, whether the person's uploading every so often, someone's putting a comment in there saying, oh, well done for doing this, rather than just leaving them to the end of the year and going, yeah, you've either passed them or you haven't passed them. Because how I tried to do it, I know we're going slightly off track and we've gone beyond our time, is you regard that professional portfolio a bit like a student's work. Do you have a student turn up in September? You don't bother talking to them. You don't bother marking their work. You don't bother giving them any feedback. And at the end of the year, they either pass their exams or they don't pass their exams. And they go, well, look, well, part of that is for a student, you'd be engaging, you'd be guiding, you'd be doing that. So what you're trying to do is create that portfolio to do that. So what we need to do is, as in both of your roles, is to develop some way which has an overview, so you know when these professional conversations are taking place, so that you can say, actually, that person is really engaged, because your staff will talk to each other and they'll go, well, I never seem to speak to my line manager. They're always too busy. They're always this, they're always that. So maybe what we will do is we'll do that as our focus, and then think about what you'd like to happen and what we might need to modify to move forward. How's that?
Yeah, because it is the IMR one for us this year was inconsistent.
Yeah.
The process. There's a lot of the managers really do sit down with that staff member, have that conversation. But we found that a couple of them, it didn't happen. And then this was for, full departments, really.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So thank you very much for your time. And I apologise if we've slightly overrun. Hopefully you found it useful, even though we haven't actually, achieved anything and have something in front of us, but it gives us some kind of idea. And how I seem to use this quote is, alone as a company, if we don't listen to you, then we're not going to end up succeeding. So the point about it is, with all our, organisations giving us feedback, providing us guidance, etc., we'll create something that is purposeful, relevant, and help us move forward. So thank you very much for your time. And I don't know if, Steve, you've got anything?
Basically, that some of the people use monitoring forms for what you're asking. They use like a monitoring form that gets filled out when you do your meeting, and it sort of has a checklist or a comments box that you can fill in.
So I did do that last year for our end of year feedback, but it then means it's not all in the same place. But I did like it because I could download it. But that is a conversation for another time, Andy. I'd like to download my interim reviews, but I'm not going to go down that route now.
That's all right. Fair enough then.
Why not?
Because it's 5:15 and I need to go and pick my kids up.
I've got to go pick mine up.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and hopefully you found it worthwhile. Okay.
Definitely,
So
definitely.
All right. Thank you very much, both.